Steve the Amateur Historian.
Hey there, guys. Whoa, that was bright. Steve the Amateur Historian here. And we made it through Election Day. I don't know how we did, but we made it through Election Day without a bunch of people dying because it was chaos. Obviously, with everything that's happened in the last 2 years, 2.5 years, people are very honest, especially up here in Portland, very democratic area. And I can give you my ballot drop-off story real quick. I went to the Belmont Library near Cesar Chavez Boulevard and Belmont Street. You know, it's election day, so I know a lot of people are going to be turning their ballots in because everyone does it last minute, no matter how important it is. I could barely get into the building. It's not that there was like a line of people, because fortunately we have the benefit in Oregon. I don't know why it isn't like this everywhere else other than corruption, but we have a mail-in ballot system. So you can get your ballot in the mail, you can fill it out, you can mail it in way in advance, or you just fill it out, take it to a library or an elections office, wherever they have a place for you to drop it off. You go up, you drop it in, you're done. You don't have to wait in line to vote for hours like other places. Anyway, but yeah, when I walked in, like I literally walk in with my ballot. I pause for like a half a second to find where the ballot box is. I turned, there it is. 10 people went by me to the ballot box in that time. And I put my ballot in, I was almost bumping into people leaving. It was like, and you could see everybody who walked in with their ballots, they were like, you know, there was this intensity on their faces. It was so important to everybody that we vote. And of course, you know, the frustrating thing is it always takes people in America, we always have to get to this really bad situation before people start getting really serious about stuff. You know, where was this intensity in 2016? You know? But anyway, so I made it out of there alive. I had to like kind of squeeze through people getting out the door. But, you know, it was chaos. And even though I don't really trust politicians, either Republican or Democrat, obviously Republicans more, I was happy to see the House flip for the Democrats, and hopefully some good comes out of that. But anyway, with it being this heated election season and the election, you know, results just finally came through, I figured, as the amateur historian, I would bring you a little interesting story in relation to politics, running for office, the drama of approaching election day. I'm going to take you back. This is it seems to be an unknown story. I only discovered this by accident looking up newspaper reports from the 1960s. I've never seen anybody historically talk about this. People who know Portland history, I'm sure they know about it, but I've never seen anybody talk about it. And it's specifically October 8th, 1962. And there is a local Portland resident named William Grenfell, who was a firefighter, I know, in the city of Portland, and he was running for a political position. I believe he was running for like a city council position, and it's October, so you're getting really close to election time come November, and this guy's, you know, he's running, you know, and, you know, as we know, I mean, with the exception of, you know, certain people like our president, you know, controversy arises. It can very negatively affect your campaign. You know, think about Gary Hart, who had to drop out because he had an extramarital affair. That was back in the 80s. Now it seems you can do whatever you want and become president. But William Grenfell has got his campaign running. It's October 8th. He's working in his office along First Avenue, which is now pretty much the Nato Parkway, and Stark, so right on the front end of downtown Portland. As he would tell it, he goes to leave his office, and he's literally grabbed and kidnapped from his office by some guy. And he takes him north. They go north on Union Avenue, which is now MLK Jr. Boulevard. They get to the vicinity of Union Avenue and Columbia Boulevard. So you're getting way north Portland. You're almost at the Columbia River. And next thing you know, William Grenfell is stumbling incoherently into the nearest hospital, telling about this crazy story about how he just got abducted. it seems while they were in the car crashed, and he was either, was dazed from the accident or he got thrown from the vehicle. He pretty much says he came to in a daze and he wanders into the hospital. It's this big, crazy story. This is a guy running for public office who gets abducted right in front of his office, right in downtown Portland. Like, you're on the front, you're right by where Waterfront Park is. So it's this wild story, only a couple of weeks before Election Day. And when the police arrive on the scene, they see that there has been a car accident. There was actually a head-on collision, and the man, who I believe was about 60, driving the other vehicle that Grenfell wasn't in, ended up dying from the accident. They also find this young woman in her mid-20s who is like sitting dazed out of her mind, like 25, I think it was like 25 feet from the vehicles where the accident happened. So there's like, oh, who is this person? And it's discovered that she worked with William Grenfell. And that's where the story starts kind of falling apart. And I think in less than 48 hours, Grenfell comes out and says that this whole story about being abducted was untrue. What really happened was he apparently, because the car that was in the accident belonged to this young woman that they found at the scene. So they're like, how does Grenfell play into this? Well, she again worked for him, and he was apparently driving her. I'm assuming maybe he was driving her home or whatever. And the story that's told is the guy coming the other way swerved into their lane, and they just couldn't avoid him, and they had a collision. That's how he died. Grenfell ends up dazed, somehow gets to the hospital, and this younger employee who works for him, who it's her car, but he's driving it, she ends up still there at the scene, just, dazed from the accident. And Grenfell would say that the reason he told this story about being abducted, he said that it was, he'd gone to the hospital, they drugged him all up, and he just spun this yarn through the midst of just being dazed out of his mind on his drugs. He came up, with this kidnapping, under the influence. But he also reportedly said that he told that story because he wanted to protect this younger employee who worked for him as much as his family. His wife was pregnant with one of their children. He said he didn't want, her to have to deal with any drama. But I'm thinking, how is telling a story, if you're trying to keep your pregnant wife calm, how is telling a story about getting kidnapped, getting into a car accident, and barely being able to escape with your life, how is that any less troubling to your significant other than I was driving my coworker home and a guy swerved into the lane, we had a car accident, I was able to stumble away and I was okay? It's a very, very suspicious thing. And there's this whole aspect of, here he is driving around with this younger, woman who worked for him, and they're driving around in her car. And in his initial story, he makes no mention of her. Obviously, he was kidnapped. He gets kidnapped in her car, and then this car accident suddenly happens. And then, in the aftermath, he's like, oh, well, I was trying to protect. That just screams like I was having an affair with this woman. I don't know if there's any evidence to that case. But, these guys that run for office, they get all these people that work for them. And how many times have we heard about men specifically running for office who end up starting to fool around with some of the women that are working for them? I'm wondering if maybe there was something there, and maybe that was why he told this story, because it covered up what was really happening, which is he's driving around really far away from his work after hours with this woman who's working for him. That's very suspicious, especially back in the 60s when you're running for public office. I'm wondering if he was trying to cover something up there. Again, no concrete evidence that William Grenfell was fooling around with this employee of his. But it's also pretty hard to believe that he spun this kidnapping while he was under the influence of drugs. I think that's a very easy thing to fall on. Oh, I was drugged out of my mind and I just made shit up. Like he was stoned. It seems to me more like he spun this story, and then the details started coming out that didn't match. Why was he driving this woman's car? Or why was he in this woman's car? Why is she there on the scene? The person kidnapped, stole her car, and abducted him and her, and he forgot that she was there. It's just, it's a chaotic mess. So it seems like, his ruse about being kidnapped was going to come apart pretty quickly, and so he came out and was like, oh, no, that was just a drug. It's just the drugs, man. And he decided to keep running. I don't think he won that position. I'm pretty sure that incident, shortly before the elections came about, that probably did not help the guy in his efforts. And so I just thought that was such an interesting piece of Portland history that I never see spoken about in any other historical, people who do historical blogs, people who have written historical books about the city. I haven't really seen this story pop up in any of them, so I thought that'd be a pretty interesting story to tell. And it's the perfect time of the year to talk about politics and how frickin' crazy things get around election season. So, here's to the future, I guess. And, till next time, guys. This has been Steve the Amateur Historian. Catch you later.